Today I'm going to do a reading on 1 Kings chapter 22. This is a story of King Ahab and King Jehoshaphat. And I'm going to start towards the end of the story where King Ahab gets taken out. But I'm going to give you a little bit of the backstory because it's a long chapter. So we have King Jehoshaphat, who is the king of Judah. And then we have King Ahab, who is the king of Israel. Ahab is a terrible king. He was married to Jezebel, which says enough right there. And then we have Jehoshaphat, who was a pretty good king, and he loved the Lord. But, you know, like anybody else we see in the Bible, he definitely had some faults. And one of his major faults was that he was unequally yoked, which the Bible tells us don't be unequally yoked. And I think that applies to all relationships, not just marriage. So here we have a believer who has allied himself with an unbeliever whose wife is just as filthy evil as it gets. And we see in the end how even through Jehoshaphat's mistakes, the Lord protects him because he belongs to him. But, you know, if it wasn't for the Lord, he would have been taken out. So this is a really good story, and I encourage you to read it on your own too. It's 1 Kings chapter 22. I'm going to start towards the end. So one more thing is King Ahab wants to go to battle against Ramoth Gilead, and he seeks the counsel of a whole bunch of prophets because he wants to know how he's going to make out. The problem is he's got all these false prophets. They're all lying to him, but he wants to listen to them because they're telling him what he wants to hear. They're telling him he's going to make it and everything's going to be okay. And then there's this one prophet, Micaiah, who is an actual prophet, and he speaks for the Lord, but King Ahab hates him because he says he never prophesies anything good about me. And Jehoshaphat tries to knock some sense into him, and he tells him, well, you should probably hear this guy out. And so he does. And then, we'll start here. So he goes to him, and Micaiah, he asks him, you know, how am I going to do in battle here? And Micaiah says, sarcastically, you'll be okay. You know, go up, you'll be victorious. The Lord will give the king victory. But the king replied sharply, how many times must I demand that you speak only the truth to me when you speak for the Lord? So he's demanding that he speaks the truth, even though whenever he does give him the truth, he won't listen to it. It's kind of funny because people tend to do that. So then Micaiah told him, in a vision I saw all Israel scattered on the mountains, like sheep without a shepherd. And the Lord said, their master has been killed. Send them home in peace. Didn't I tell you, he says to Jehoshaphat, he never prophesies anything but trouble for me. But the reason he never prophesies anything good is because there's nothing good about Ahab. God doesn't have any good news for him because he won't listen to him. But he has itching ears, and there's a lesson right there for us is, you know, sometimes we like to listen to the preachers that sound good. We like to listen to the ones that tell us everything's going to be okay, stay in your sin, not a big deal, Jesus loves you. And he does, but he doesn't condone sin. So oftentimes when you have the bigger crowd telling you whatever you want to hear, it's a sign not to listen to them and go to the one that'll hurt your feelings to tell you the truth, to save you. All right. So we have Micaiah telling him everything he sees. He's prophesying to him that that God he's going to take you out in this war. You're dead, but he goes for it anyway. All right. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Let's see. So Ahab asked Micaiah, how is this all going to go down? Right? Specifically. And Micaiah tells him, you know, what he saw. He saw a vision in heaven, right? So there were evil spirits approaching God, giving him suggestions, you know. So this is a principle that we saw in the book of Job too. So Before Job's life got destroyed by Satan, Satan had to go to God and ask him for permission. Anything that he took from Job, the Lord had to give him the okay on. That's a hard thing. That's a hard pill to swallow. A lot of times we don't want to hear that, hear that, but it's not that God condones it. It's not that he approves of it, but he allows it. He allows evil to do what evil is going to do in this world, and then he's going to take all the evil out and condemn him to hellfire forever after. But in the meantime, God has purpose in allowing Satan to reign in this world. Satan is the small g god of this world. And we see that this doesn't... Don't misunderstand this to think that God is condoning evil. God's just sovereign over the evil. So these evil spirits approach God, and they ask him, they suggest, we're going to go and we're going to lie to all these prophets. So God's using it to his advantage. So these prophets go and lie to him, and he takes their word over Micaiah's, even though really he knew that Micaiah was telling him the truth, but he didn't want to face it. So he goes into battle. It's certain death, but he goes in anyway, and he tries to outsmart God. So this is where it gets interesting, right? This is the death of Ahab. So Ahab goes into battle, and he says to Jehoshaphat, as we go into battle, I'll disguise myself so no one recognizes me, but you wear your royal robes. So the king of Israel disguised himself, and they went into battle. So Jehoshaphat hasn't seen it coming yet, but he should see it now, because he's straight up blind to this guy. Ahab's telling him, I'm going to disguise myself, but you go out, let them see that you're a king, wear your royal robes, right? But I'm going to disguise myself so I can blend in. And really what he's doing, he's trying to outsmart God. He's trying to survive through this war. And he's also trying to set up his friend to take the hit for him, right? He looks like a king. He thinks they're going to go into battle and he's going to be the target. But what he doesn't recognize is that Jehoshaphat belongs to the Lord. So the Lord's protecting Jehoshaphat through this, through his own stupidity, right? So they go out into battle. Meanwhile, the king of Aram had issued these orders to his 32 chariot commanders. Attack only the king of Israel. So the king of Israel is Ahab. Jehoshaphat is the king of Judah. So you can see God's hand behind this, right? He has the enemy give orders only to attack Ahab. Don't bother with anyone else. So when the Aramean chariot commanders saw Jehoshaphat in his robes, they went after him. There is the king of Israel, they shouted. But when Jehoshaphat called out, the chariot commanders realized he wasn't the king of Israel, and they stopped chasing him. In any other battle, he would have been taken out right there. But that's the hand of God on his life. All right, an Aramean soldier, however, randomly shot an arrow. This is where it gets real good. So, an Aramean soldier randomly shot an arrow at the Israelite troops. He wasn't even shooting at Ahab. He was shooting at a crowd. And it was a random draw. It shows how precise God is. And he hit the king of Israel between the joints of his armor. So he's all armored up. He's trying to protect himself in battle, right? They're fully covered. But he's got little, sections where the shield, will meet up with the armor over here. He's got a little space here. And God uses a random arrow that wasn't even aimed at him. And he gets him right in the heart, right? God can find his way to anybody's heart. Sometimes through salvation, and sometimes he has to just take the wicked down. The wicked try to run and hide, but they can't. And that's one of the things that the Lord showed me in here is that Ahab tried to hide in the beginning, right? He tried to hide by blending into the crowd and taking off, his robes and just dressing up like a soldier. He was trying to hide, and then at the end, he tries to run here. So he gets shot, and then he runs out of here. He says, so the king of Israel is hit between the joints of his armor, he turns the horses. He says, "Get me out of here." Ahab groaned to deliver his chariot. "I'm badly wounded." So now he tries to run from God's wrath, right? God's already prophesied that this is going down, and he's still trying to get away. He could have repented at least right then, and he didn't. The battle raged all that day, and the king remained propped up in his chariot facing the Arameans. The blood from his wound ran down to the floor of his chariot, and as evening arrived, he died. Just as the sun was setting, the cry ran through his troops, "We're done for, run for your lives." So the king died, and his body was taken to Samaria and buried there. Then his chariot was washed beside the pool of Samaria, and dogs came and licked his blood at the place where the prostitutes bathed, just as the Lord had promised. So, when I read the end of this about the dogs, it got me thinking, everything that's in the Bible is there for a reason. Every detail has a purpose, and the detail that really caught my eye in this was the dogs. Why did the dogs come and lick his blood? Wild dogs are wild dogs, but why does the Bible record it? And then I thought about, in another chapter, we see how his wife dies, Jezebel. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. We have a similar situation in the death of Jezebel, and if you want to read that, it's in 2 Kings chapter 9. And so we have Ahab and Jezebel, who both, when they die, they each had prophets tell them exactly how it's going to go down, right? And both prophecies came true. And both ended with dogs. So when Jezebel died, she was thrown out a window. She was trampled on by horses. And as people were celebrating over her death and feasting, outside were some wild dogs that came and feasted on her. And they ate her till there was nothing left but her skull and her hands. And I thought, okay, dogs again. A married couple, common denominator, dogs, right? The dogs ate her, and the dogs licked up the blood of Ahab. And so I looked into it and saw that dogs were, so they were pagans. They belonged to the Canaanite religion, and dogs were a symbol of that religion. So this is God's irony that, in a sense, their own gods took them out, right? So whatever spirits we give ourselves over to, they're going to come back for us. So whatever, it says in the Bible, God cannot be mocked. Whatever a person reaps, he'll sow. When God hands people over to a reprobate mind, or when God hands people over to their sin, really all he's doing is giving them what they've asked for. So when people won't repent, whatever spirits they've given themselves over to, they're going to come back for them, right? The devil, he lies, right? He loves to deceive us and tell us that, he makes all kinds of promises, and we think that we're going to get away with things. But when we give the devil legal right in our lives, he's going to come back, and he's going to take us out. It's kind of like with alcoholism. We use that for an example. He'll lie and make you think that everything's great and it's a party until it's not, and your life is ruined. And you got to pay the piper, right? So we can see that with any other sin too. Any way that we give the devil reign in our lives, he's going to come back, and he's not going to stop until we're destroyed. So I think the dogs also represent that, whatever we give ourselves into, it's going to come back for us. It's going to come back and take us out. Anyway, hope this blessed you guys. I'm going to do my next video on Jehoshaphat in 2 Chronicles chapter 20. It's a good one. So please like, subscribe, and share.